Welcome to Thought Frontier.
Ever feel like the internet's kind of this unstoppable force out there? Like, it's changing everything.
I think it's kind of wild, right?
Well, get this, that's exactly what we're diving into today, how it's reshaping society. And no, it's not just about, like, faster cat videos or whatever.
No, not at all.
We're going deep, folks. We've got academic papers, personal stories, even a popular YouTube channel's take on this whole thing. Get ready for some serious aha moments. You know, the surprising facts that make you see the web in a whole new light.
What I find fascinating is how we tend to think about the internet as if it's separate from, real life, when the reality is it's so deeply intertwined. Like, could you even imagine life without it at this point?
Seriously, remember those dial-up days? One of our sources, Computers, Internet, and Society, takes us back, like way back to those screeching modems and those stacks of AOL CDs.
Oh, I remember those.
The author talks about typing school papers instead of handwriting them. Can you even imagine?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
It's crazy how quickly we adapt, isn't it?
Totally.
But this actually brings up a point that the source calls the technology trap. Could you, like right now in 2024, function without the internet for a whole week?
Oh, gosh.
And I'm not just talking about missing your social media fix here, but how would your work be impacted, or getting food, even just talking to people?
Whoa, okay, that got real dark really fast.
Yeah.
The source talks about this idea of societal fragility. Like, if the internet went down, boom, chaos, supply chains, communication networks, our jobs.
Right. So much of what we rely on is now totally dependent on the internet. It's kind of unnerving when you think about it.
Okay, but before we descend into a full-on internet apocalypse panic here, let's inject some optimism.
Okay, good.
The video, How the Internet Changed Everything, argues the complete opposite. They're like, hey, the internet hasn't ruined us, it's actually made us more connected than ever.
Interesting.
And they throw out some mind-blowing numbers. 300 hours of YouTube uploads every single minute. 500,000 Facebook comments, like every minute. It's easy to forget. Just a few decades ago, none of this even existed.
It's true. The scale of online interaction is it's mind-boggling, and it really highlights that the internet's impact isn't universally good or bad, right? It's way more nuanced. There are amazing opportunities for connection, for progress, but we've also got those challenges around control, around access. It's leading to vastly different experiences for people.
So we have to talk about the digital divide then, right? Like, it's not just about who has access,
Right.
but how they actually experience the internet, what it means to them.
Exactly. Impact of the internet on modern society really hits on this stark reality. 2/3 of the world is online, but that access, it's not equal at all. To put that into perspective, over 90% of North America has internet access, but only about 30% of Africa does.
Wow.
So it makes you wonder, are we truly a connected globe if such a significant portion lacks this, this basic access?
And even beyond just getting online, there are these totally different expectations and experiences, right?
Yeah.
Like this report, A Brave New World, focuses on developing nations where, get this, the internet is viewed overwhelmingly positive. They see it as a tool for progress.
Yeah, and they highlight Pakistan specifically. They've seen this boom in mobile internet use, female entrepreneurs using it to build businesses. There's even a virtual university reaching these really remote areas.
It's amazing. They have these internet kiosks popping up so people can access information, educational resources, stuff that was totally out of reach before.
It's inspiring, right? But it also brings up this other layer of complexity, even when we're talking about providing access, who ultimately controls that information.
We're talking about Facebook, right? That whole project to bring the internet to underserved areas, but like with restrictions.
Yes, exactly. This walled garden approach, where Facebook offers free internet, but only to a limited set of websites, most notably Facebook itself. So it raises some really important questions, right? Is restricted internet better than none at all? Who gets to decide what information people have access to?
It's kind of like being allowed into this massive library, but you can only read books from like one shelf.
Exactly. It really highlights this tension between wanting to bridge the digital divide, but then potentially controlling that online experience in the process. What do you think about that trade-off?
This whole thing about controlling access, it gets even more interesting when you think about how the internet impacts like power structures.
Yeah.
Like governments, companies, all of that. Could the internet actually change how we govern ourselves,
Right.
like fundamentally?
It's a really interesting question, and it's one that Feature Perfect really dives into. Their argument is that we're shifting away from these like rigid centralized systems of the past, those top-down structures,
Right.
towards something way more decentralized, almost like internet-like in how decisions are made, how power is actually distributed.
Okay, so instead of like a pyramid with a few people at the top calling all the shots, we'd have what, like a massive online forum where everyone votes on everything.
Well, not necessarily. The source talks about moving towards this idea of like decentralized governance. Basically, it's about distributing power more evenly, giving citizens a more direct say in the decisions that impact their lives. It's like, think about it this way. Instead of having a single government agency controlling something like energy, imagine a network of local communities, each managing their own renewable energy grid, making decisions collectively. That's just one example, but it kind of gives you a sense of how the internet could actually facilitate these kinds of shifts.
That's a really interesting concept, but I can already see some potential pitfalls. Like, wouldn't that kind of system be incredibly difficult to manage in practice? And what about security? Didn't A Brave New World talk about how the internet is basically a nightmare for traditional security models?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a total double-edged sword. The same openness that allows for citizen participation, that allows for that decentralization, also creates these vulnerabilities, right?
Right.
Governments are now grappling with this rise in cybercrime, misinformation campaigns. There's a very real threat of non-state actors leveraging the internet for their own agendas. It's just this constantly evolving landscape, which makes it so difficult to establish any sort of firm control.
It's like trying to nail jelly to a wall, constantly shifting, impossible to pin
Yeah.
down. And speaking of shifting landscapes, we can't forget how the internet has completely upended the balance of power between like everyday consumers and these massive companies.
Oh, for sure. And Impact of the Internet on Modern Society had some really insightful points about this. They argue that consumers actually hold a significant amount of power now, more than ever before.
Really?
Think about online reviews, for example. One scathing reviewer can completely tank a product's reputation overnight. It doesn't matter how much money a company pours into traditional advertising.
Tell me about it. I live and die by online reviews, whether it's like choosing a restaurant, booking a hotel, even finding a plumber. I always check the reviews first. It's like this collective consumer consciousness that companies they can't ignore anymore.
Totally. And it goes beyond just reviews, too. The way we shop now, how we consume media, even how we find romantic partners, the internet has disrupted, like, entire industries, social norms in ways we're only beginning to grasp.
It's true. The internet has given consumers a voice, and a platform to be heard like never before.
Mhm.
But here's the thing that really makes me wonder if we're truly in control. Algorithms.
Yes. This ties back to our earlier conversation about, like, control and access. While the internet has absolutely empowered consumers in so many ways, it's also created this whole other set of power dynamics, right? Algorithms, those invisible lines of code that basically dictate what we see, how we experience the online world, they're incredibly influential in shaping our choices now.
It's like these invisible puppeteers pulling the strings behind the scenes, and we're often completely unaware of their influence.
Exactly. Algorithms are curating our news feeds, recommending products, even filtering potential matches on dating apps. They're designed to keep us engaged, right? But that often means showing us content that just reinforces our existing biases. It creates these echo chambers where we're only exposed to information that aligns with our pre-existing beliefs.
That's what really freaks me out the most. This idea that we think we're making our own choices, but in reality, those choices are being subtly influenced by these algorithms that are designed to keep us hooked.
It is a deeply unsettling thought. It raises some serious questions about free will, about manipulation, about the unintended consequences of these powerful technologies. We've created these incredibly sophisticated tools, but are we now at risk of being controlled by our own creations?
It's like we wandered into an episode of Black Mirror or something.
Yeah.
Where we're all just data points being manipulated by algorithms.
Yeah.
It's kind of unsettling when you really think about it.
It is unsettling, and it kind of gets at the heart of the question posed by A Brave New World.
Which is?
How do we reconcile the internet's incredible potential for good with these very real risks it poses to our autonomy, to our social fabric? It's not an easy question to answer.
No, it's not like there's a simple off switch for all these complex issues, right?
Not at all.
The sources we've looked at offer a lot of different perspectives, but there are no easy solutions here.
What's interesting is that despite their different viewpoints, a lot of the sources seem to agree on one thing.
Okay, what's that?
We need new rules for the digital age.
Rules, like an internet rule book. I can see it now. Chapter 1. Thou shalt not post blurry selfies. Okay, I'll stop. But seriously, what would those rules even look like?
Yeah.
And who would enforce them?
Well, A Brave New World suggests we need to think bigger than just national interests.
Okay.
They say we need to start establishing global norms for online behavior. Something like a digital Geneva Convention, if you will.
So international agreements on things like data privacy, cybersecurity, maybe even guidelines for how social media companies moderate content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just those formal agreements.
Okay.
They emphasize the need for a more inclusive approach to internet governance.
Meaning it shouldn't just be governments or these big tech giants calling the shots.
Precisely. We need diverse voices at the table. Everyday users, ethicists, academics, everyone who is impacted by the internet should have a say in shaping its future.
Okay, so where does that leave us then? Should we all just delete our social media accounts, throw away our smartphones, and, go on a permanent digital detox?
It's not about retreating from the digital world entirely.
Right.
The internet's here to stay, and it has immense potential for good.
Yeah.
Think about the connections it's allowed us to make, the information we can access, the opportunities it has created. I mean, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Oh, you're right. Yep.
It's about finding a way to harness the power of the internet for good while also mitigating those very real risks.
I like that.
It's about being mindful of our own online behavior, demanding more transparency from these tech companies, and, just staying engaged in conversations about digital rights and governance.
That's a good point.
A Brave New World leaves us with this really powerful thought.
What's that?
Will we see greater global cooperation to address these challenges? Or will the internet just further fragment us?
That's a pretty profound question to end on.
It is, right?
It really drives home the point that the future of the internet isn't predetermined.
Yeah.
It's being shaped by our choices, every single day.
Every single day, exactly.
So the next time you're scrolling through your social media feed or clicking on a targeted ad,
Right.
take a moment to really think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How are your actions shaping this digital landscape?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of online world do you want to be a part of?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, for sure.
For sure.
Because as we've seen today, the internet's impact on society is so far-reaching and it's constantly evolving.
It's a mirror, really reflecting our values, our choices, our collective responsibility.
I love that. A mirror.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating and ever-evolving world of the internet.
This was fun.
It was fun, right? Until next time, stay curious and, don't forget to log off every now and then.